Hey there, welcome into a rate update presented by Surge Transportation. I'm Andrew Cox, a senior retail analyst here at FreightWaves, and spot rates are off the charts. They seemingly are rising every week. Different outlets are reporting different sources, are reporting different rates. Who knows what the true spot rate is? So we are here to talk with Omar Singh, the founder and president of Surge Transportation, about dark rates, about the true spot rates, and differences between how carriers and brokers are sourcing capacity. Omar, thanks so much for joining me again. It's good to see you.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me again.
All right, Omar, let's start with this dark rate. This is kind of an idea that I have never really dived into. So talk to me about what is a dark rate.
So all of the rate index engines in the industry really split rates into one of two types of rates. They think that there's only either a shipper to carrier contract rate where the shipper awards, off of an RFP to a large motor carrier, whatever that static rate is for the year, or a broker to carrier spot rate, which goes on the assumption that every single load is moved in spot. But the reality of our industry, the strategy is for brokers to find carriers to take repeat business on repeat lanes, repeat awards that they win from a carrier. And that rate doesn't have a name. It's not called what it should be, which is the broker to carrier contract. Just like there's a shipper to carrier contract, there's a broker to carrier contract, because those loads don't move in spot, right? If a broker finds a carrier to take 3 loads a week from Jacksonville to Chicago and they agree on a rate, that is not a spot rate. That is a contract rate. The load's not posted, and it is not the same as a spot rate. And that doesn't have a name, and it's broker to carrier contract. I think it needs to have a name in all of our discussions.
The dark rate is what we're going with. I like that name. It has a little bit of mystery to it.
Right. Yeah, it is mysterious because people don't recognize it. And then they look at the index and they say, well, this is the spot rate. But the reality is, like I say, if you have a carrier that you give a lane to or assign a lane to, award for $3,000, go from Jacksonville to Chicago 3 times a week, and 1 week they're not available, then we have to move it on the spot market for $4,000. That's the true spot rate, right? That's not the $3,000 isn't the spot rate. The $4,000 is the spot rate when the contracted carrier cannot take it. And nobody really identifies that. And I would say even the worst thing that can happen is the rate index engines all say, well, that's an outlier, right? It normally moves at 3,000. That moved at 4,000. So we're just not even going to count it. We're not going to consider it because it's too far off. But the reality is that's the real number. That's what people need to know because it's moving in spot at 4,000 rather than broker to carrier contract at 3. And all the tools go, either it's an outlier, we're not going to count it, or we're just going to say that it maybe once or twice it'll go there, but it's not the real rate. But it is the real rate. It's the only real rate. It's the true spot rate.
Omar, let's shift gears to some of the differences between how shippers and brokers source capacity.
Well, I think it's the same, right? And that's kind of the most interesting part to me is everybody has this idea that brokers just what they call post and pray, right? That they throw something on the board and whatever it is that day is what it moves at. And it's not the truth. So the funny thing is there aren't a lot of differences between how shippers and carriers source capacity. So shippers award business to the same motor carrier on the same lane for whatever time period it is, usually a year. And then that carrier will try to find their own drivers that are part of their fleet to haul the lane. And brokers do the exact same thing. So they get an award from, I always use where our offices are, Jacksonville to Chicago, 3 times a week. And that broker's job is to do the same thing that the shipper does, which is to go and find a carrier who wouldn't otherwise maybe have access to that shipper to haul the loads, 3 times a week. And maybe it's one carrier they get to do it 3 times a week. The same way the shipper does. That's why that rate needs a name, right? It is a broker to carrier contract, just like there's a shipper to carrier contract. It's just that there's smaller carriers, but it doesn't mean that there's not a contract. And maybe the broker uses 3 carriers on the lane and they, each gets 1 load a week, right? And maybe a shipper would want 1 carrier to give them 3 trucks and a broker will find 3 carriers to give them 1 truck. It's still a contract though. And so there isn't a difference and everybody thinks there's a difference, but the strategy in our industry is to get the same carriers on the same lanes for the same freight and the same customers and do a really good job servicing it because they know the lane well, they know the sites well, they know everything about the customer and that particular lane well. And there is no difference. But everyone thinks it's just a post and pray industry, and it's just not the case. Brokerages are designed to source repeat carrier relationships with the brokers on the same lanes. That's a business strategy. The same way shippers do it is the same way brokers do it.
Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of good points. You also create a lot of efficiencies, not going ad hoc and random one-offs all the time, and creating repeatable, actionable lanes. Omar, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time today. Everyone, FreightWaves, stay tuned for more rate updates and more technology updates presented to you by Surge Transportation right here on FreightWaves.com.